And hello, everyone. While we give incoming guests a few more seconds to arrive, I would like to kindly ask you to keep yourself muted. Omer, you're the only exception. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And I would like to ask you to use the opportunity to rename yourself so that we can have a direct and personal conversation after our inspiration input with our guests today. So please make use of the toolbar in the bottom of your Zoom window. And if you select participants and you click at the drop down next to your name, you can rename yourself. So please rename yourself with your full name and, if you wish, your organization, so that we can also address you later on directly. And as we still give incoming guests a few more seconds to arrive, I would like to take the chance to welcome everyone. And I would also like to share a few housekeeping notes before we get started. So as we start with an inspirational input, I would like to inform you that we will record this meeting for internal documentation purposes. We will not share your names and your contacts. We will ask you at the end of today's talk whether you would like to receive more information about the talk, potentially the presentation, and more. But so far, this is only for internal documentation purposes. Please keep yourself muted. Feel free to enable your camera so that we can have more of an personal and human touch in this conversation here. And we will then have the opportunity to exchange afterwards. Feel free to make use of the chat. Share your inputs, your questions in the chat so that we can get back to that later on. There will be most probably more guests coming in the next seconds, but I would like to get started and welcome Omer Kulka to today's Visionary Talk. Thanks for taking your time.
Thank you, Martin. Hey guys, so let me introduce myself just a little bit, and I'll introduce Kornit a little bit and how we see the world and who we are today. You had some engagement with our technology, but I think it's just one part of it, and I wanted to give you kind of like a fuller and broader picture of who we are and who we strive to be. I'm going to keep it fairly short, probably like 15 minutes, and then Martin and I discussed that it probably it's going to be best to have it as an open discussion and Q&A. So I'll share a few slides at the beginning just to give you guys something to hold on to, but then we'll just have a discussion. If anyone has a question or anything, just feel free. So can I share the screen, Martin?
Yes, give me a sec. Jana, can you make Omer a co-host, please? Can you give me a quick thumbs up? Wonderful.
Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Good. Okay, so just a little bit about myself. So my name is Omer. I've been with Kornit for over 11 years. So it's been quite a journey. When I joined Kornit, we were a small private tech company. Now we're since 2015, we're publicly traded. NASDAQ became very big. Over 10 times larger in revenue and people, etc. So it's been quite the journey. Back then or whatever it is. It was way before Fashtech was a thing and somebody understood that it even existed. But in a sense, we were always there. So let me give you a little bit about our history, who we are, where we came from, and where we're going, and then we'll open it for further discussion. Sorry. So this is our vision, and this is a vision that we put together about 6 years ago, and already then it was way beyond just print. So originally, what we do is we develop technology for printing, for digital printing on textiles. But we knew that this was just kind of like an enabling layer that we need to move on from. And if you can see here, there's no digital, there's no printing. We always thought of the product that comes off our systems as something that is much more than just a product. And for us, fashion in general is not about nice clothes or stuff like that. It's about the most personal tool for self-expression out there. And when I talk about self-expression, I think it's in two layers. One, it's just what I want to say, but when I think that in fashion, it's even more than that. It's who I am. It's my identity, right? They say that the clothes make the man, and this is not obviously the woman and everyone else as well. So this is something that we truly believe in, and we understand that we are just an enabling layer of technology that really enables people at the end of that chain to really express who they are in a very different way than it used to be in the fashion industry. And now we'll talk about that a little bit. So these are four mega trends that are pretty much driving our view of the world, I would say. Okay. And when I talk about mega trends, let me just give you an understanding what that means for us, right? So a trend for us is something that goes up and down, and a mega trend is something that goes like this. So think about it like a mathematical trend, right? It just goes in that direction. Now, obviously, this will change at one point, but when we set a few years ago, we said, okay, what is going to shape the world that we know, and not only in our industry, but really shape things out, and then we'll have an impact on our industry and our world, and then as a derivative of us as a company. These are the four pillars that we came with, that we thought are going to be the most interesting. So first three are actually under a very clear umbrella, which is about digital, right? It's about the digital world that we live in, the digital ecosystem that we live in. And the last is sustainability, right? So I'll just run you through it very, very fast. I think that you guys understand when you see those, it's not surprising, hey, yes, I see that as a mega trend in the world. So let's talk a little bit about what is the impact on the fashion industry. By the way, when I talk about fashion, when we talk about fashion in Kornit, something we call Fashion X, we like to call it, it's self-expression through textile. So it can be home fashion as well. So it doesn't have to be something that you wear necessarily. So fashion is really in its broadest term as you can think about it. So e-com is booming. So e-com started, it's like everybody, we know that e-com is all around us. Apparel, though, did not really join the party until very, very late because of the very clear reasons. It's a very physical thing that you need to feel, touch, and try on more than anything else. That completely changed a few years ago when apparel became two things. One, the biggest category online, overpassing computer and electronics, was always like #1 category. So apparel became #1, and it was also the fastest growing, right? And that's a mega trend, right? So if something is #1 and growing the fastest, that's a mega trend. That means that you're always there, right? Put COVID aside, everybody bought toilet paper, canned food, and stuff like that online. But it's like again, when you look at the world, self-expression is something that is not, we did not invent that, but it has a completely different flavor and volume in the digital world. And we see that a lot, in social media, which we'll talk about immediately. But one of the key things that we see in fashion, for example, is, I'll give you an example. In the past few years, well, it's been a few years already, 5, 6, or 7, or something like that. The look became something a lot more personal, right? So like you catch people on the street and you see, oh, what is your look? So if total look before was a look that was just copy pasted from a magazine or from the runway, Now it was like, yes, it's a Louis Vuitton bag, sandals that I bought at a Greek market, thrift shop, sunglasses, and a top by Zara, and everything is very, very personal. Um, there was a trend back then, we called it debranding, right? So in t-shirts, you see it a lot. For example, it used to be very common to wear t-shirts with the logo, big logo on your chest. You hardly see that anymore, right? It's something that doesn't work anymore. Why? Because it's about me, it's not about them. So something there is really, really changing about where the trends are coming from, what it is that I feel comfortable wearing, and how self-identity and self-expression is actually becoming very different in its essence. And of course, in the digital world, it comes across as we can actually be a lot of different people on different platforms and different places. So we actually have more than just one identity in a much, I would say, seamless manner than before. Social media. So social media, we all know it. I mean, it changed completely the way we interact with each other. But when it comes to fashion, also it changes a lot of what fashion is all about. Just to give you guys an understanding, in the US, when you look at market research, it's about 75% of consumers' decision are being driven by social media, driven and impacted by social media, right? And this is huge. This is a huge thing. And it means that what happens is that the trends are actually being set there. And now everybody knows that, right? Fashionistas, bloggers, blah, 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 influencers. Influencers is something that was born like a few years ago. That's it. It was not there before because there was no way of people influencing so many other people in a way that is engaging and actually changes and manipulates, not in a bad way, just changes the way they behave. And that is, in a sense, had one of the most, I would say, one of the biggest impacts on the fashion industry, because it created a completely different dynamics of trends, right? Because in the old school world, a supply chain of a brand was somewhere between 12 to 18 months, right? Now, if I design something and then I make it and then I put it on the shelf in 12 months or 18 months from now, in order for you to buy it, I need to guess what you're going to buy. The only way around that I don't need to guess is that I create the trend, right? So I make something way in advance, and when I put it in the store, I create the trend, right? Because the models are and the celebrities and what happens at the shows and everything, and the flowers go into style right now. Yeah, but those flowers were designed 12 months ago, but now they're going to style because control the trend. Social media has taken that power from the brands in a sense. And now think about it as democratizing trends, right? And when trends are coming bottom up instead of top down, suddenly I get stuck with inventory that I made, but I have zero control of what you're going to buy because I don't set the trends anymore. And that created a very, very huge, that created a huge impact on the industry, basically. So what happens is that your bestsellers run out because you didn't know it's going to be bestsellers, so you didn't make enough of those. And on the other side, you get stuck with tons of markdown inventory and even unsold inventory, right? And that takes us to the last but not least pillar in our slide here, which is sustainability. A lot of people are not really aware about the sustainability impact of textile and fashion. Fashion and textiles are actually amongst the top polluting industries out there. Somewhere between 20 to 25, so 22, 23% of water pollution globally is actually attributed to textile and fashion, which is insane. Just to give you guys some numbers so you'll understand, right? In order to overcome what I just told you about not knowing what people are going to buy, there's a very clear model in the industry, which is 30% overproduction. Okay, that's a rule of thumb. If I think that I'm going to sell 100 tank tops of that specific design, I'm going to make 130. Why? Because if it's a high runner that actually goes out, it's worthwhile selling those extra 30. And this is why I actually bake in 30% overproduction into the model. That 30% overproduction alone is responsible for crazy levels of pollution. Just to give you guys some estimates, so you guys know how much water you need to make one t-shirt? 2.5 tons, right? That's 2,500 liters of water to make one t-shirt. And it's 7,500 liters to make a pair of jeans. So if I'm wearing jeans and t-shirt, that's 10,000 liters of water just there. So 30% overproduction because nobody knows where it's going. These are crazy, crazy, crazy numbers, guys, right? So that's kind of the world that we identify. That's the world we operate in. And our aim is to actually change that, to create an alternative that is going to be viable to actually answer these demands of the world that is moving in that direction and actually enabling that change. And this is where our technology comes into play. Any questions until now? If you have questions, then you're on mute, and I'll just move on. We'll have time for questions later anyway. So what I'm going to do here is, without going into the details of the technology, I'm going to give you guys kind of like a run through the chapters in the life of Kornit, which correlates completely to the market cycles and what happened in the last 20 years, actually, right? We're celebrating our 20th year. It was Kornit was founded in 2002. We came out, a few years after with the first technology. So, and I'll just go through that, and you'll understand a little bit about how the market evolved in that way. So, Kornit 1.0 is a first industrial. Is the first industrial printer for t-shirts.
Thanks for joining, but please mute yourself. There's a bit of back noise. Thank you. Keep going, Omer.
I will. So it was about printing on t-shirts, right? So that was the original intent. It was like, printed t-shirts. It's an amazing product. It's being done very, very analog, and we want it to be done digitally. Back then, people wanted to print on t-shirts. That was called modified epsons. They used to take very large office printers, and they would take out the paper feeder, and they would put like a tray, and they would replace the ink, and would put there like colors for textile, and they will try to work with that. That was, it was very. And we developed back then an industrial system, something that will work on industrial scale in terms of volumes and costs, etc. And that was Kornit 1.0. Our customers back then were actually early adopters in e-commerce. Cafe Press, Zazzle, names like that. If it says something to you guys, it was like very unique e-com sites that created the way for people to personalize stuff and customize stuff, upload their stuff, their images, and actually print them on shirts. Very low quality, but a very, very cool proposition, because hey, I can get my dog's picture on a shirt. Why the heck not, right? It was apparel, it was merch, it was a lot of different things. Fashion, it was not, I can tell you, right? So that was that. Then the second, in the second phase of Kornit, we actually entered into printing on rolls of fabric, which actually creates a completely, it opens up a completely new vertical in the market, which is where most fashion and stuff like that is being the way it's being done, meaning that we print on a fabric and then we cut and trim, make trim, CMTs, or we cut and saw and actually make goods out of this. And that was Kornit 2.0. It's taking the same process and the same chemistry inside. By the way, what we do here is we develop everything ourselves. We develop our systems, we develop our chemistry, inks, process, software. A little bit about our size. We have about 1,500, so 1,500 customers worldwide. We have thousands of systems working. So it's an industrial play, and this is something that you guys need to understand. This is a play to actually change the way things are being done, and not like a point of sale, like a mom's and pop's shop at the mall that just prints t-shirts for kids or something like that. It's not the aim of this, right? So that was the second chapter. The third chapter was about retail quality. So I told you guys, up until that moment in time, it was mainly about these kind of like unique business models online. It was cool, it was nice, but it wasn't really the quality that I would buy at the store, right? So if I wanted, we talked about back then were logos, right? So if I wanted a logo in my shirt, I'm not going to buy it online. I'm going to buy it at the store. But if it's a picture of my dog, yeah, so it doesn't need to meet the quality standards of something that I expect to find at the store. And in about 2017, we started changing that because we understood, for the reasons that I told you before, that classic, I would say, retailers and brands are going to need on demand because of the inventory issues that we just discussed, right? So it's for a different reason. They don't want me to personalize or customize or whatever, but they want to be able to, to be adaptive to the market, to understand what is the trend and to react to it. And that's when we started working a lot stronger towards the quality and the requirements of fashion, which are completely different than what we did before. I'll give you an example. In the mode of me putting my dog's face on a shirt, two shirts of the same print will never be at the same time in the same place, right? So it doesn't matter, for example, if I don't have consistency, but if on a retailer's shelf you have 100 shirts, they need to look exactly the same. That is something, for example, that is a very, very difficult technological challenge that we never had to deal with before that, right? So a lot of things change with us understanding that we need to go towards like mainstream fashion, I would say. And that is Kornit 3.0. It's like it's a retail quality. By the way, on the back of it, from a change in the market, just so you'll understand, this is roughly the point in time when we saw a very, very big shift in our customers. And this is interesting because it says a lot about the back end of the market and the industry. So up until that point in time, Kornit's most successful customers were, I would say, garment decorators that were tech savvy, that they understood that in order for them to compete better with the competition, to grab more market share, to have higher value products and better margin, they need to adopt new technology and actually provide new capabilities to their customer base. At that moment in time, that changed completely. And if you look at our most successful customers now, they're actually IT companies, which is like, how can that be? Why IT companies? And the reason for that is because a lot of e-com players have started working on the back end as well. And they understand that the vertical of printed apparel is a super duper lucrative. So our biggest customer right now is Amazon. Amazon have huge production sites with hundreds of systems, printing t-shirts on demand sustainably only when you buy it. And you know why? Because the strategy makes that an imperative. Because when you go on Amazon, there are two things that happen. And when those two conditions intersect, you have to run on demand. One, there's a huge collection, right? If I go on Amazon and say, okay, print a t-shirt, I'm going to see 5 shirts. I'm not going to buy anything online if I see only that, right? If I go to a boutique and I see 5 shirts, that's cool. I usually need to see 20 in order for me to buy one of the 5 that everybody buys. So I need another 15, but it doesn't really matter. But online, I have to see a gazillion shirts, right? Otherwise, I move to the next slide. So that's the first condition, a huge catalog. The second is time to delivery, Amazon Prime. Right? So I buy and I want it today, or I want it tomorrow, or I want it in 2 days. And then when these two conditions intersect, you have to do it on demand. Most people don't realize that, because when they buy something on Amazon, they think, yeah, there's a huge warehouse somewhere and somebody goes out and takes this shirt, puts it in a bag and sends it over. But if I'm a medium and I want a red t-shirt with whatever Guns N' Roses print on it, they don't have that in stock next to my house so I can get it next day, because that would mean that they have billions of dollars worth of inventory everywhere in the world. So this is how this shifted very dramatically. And these guys actually operate the back end of a lot of different things right now. And when you see right now brands trying to go into these directions, they can't really rely on their old supply chains, and they have to actually adopt new ways of doing things. And these guys are just a lot more effective at that than this. I can give you an example that we always have this conversation about how big they are, and you talk about the huge manufacturers in China or in Vietnam or in Bangladesh, and you're telling me, you know what? Yeah, these sites they run about 1 million or 1.5 million items a month. And it's like, what? That's nothing. I mean, we do that a day, but yeah, but it's on demand. It's one-offs. That's 1.5 million orders a month. And it's like, well, we cannot do that, right? So that is the level of scale. It's whether 1.5 million items are separated to 3 orders or 1.5 million orders to 1.5 million different consumers, right? So that's the scale. That's the understanding of what is running on demand. So that's that. And in the last 2 minutes, and I'm going to take up your time, I'm going to talk to you about the next generation, the current place we are at Kornit, which we call Kornit 4.0, which is our 4th chapter, but also into, obviously refers to Industry 4.0, IoT, connectivity, etc. And this is something that we actually started building in COVID. So COVID was a very interesting story for us. We entered 2020, very nicely and regular, and then mid-March or so, just everything came to a halt, which was insane. So at one point in time, we just saw a complete stop from both supply and demand. Nobody wanted to buy, nobody wanted to manufacture. That's it. Everything is at a standstill. It was about 3 weeks that we saw moving from east to west. It started in Asia, went through Europe, and went to the US and Latin America afterwards. It was like 3 weeks that were moving around the world. And then at the second half of May, about 2 months later, something really interesting happened, and we saw a clear split between our customers. The ones that are, I would say, e-com heavy as an ecosystem, really embedded in e-com, just started booming like crazy, and the other ones just kept on struggling. And then we realized 2 very, very interesting things, right? We realized that A, there was way more demand than supply, and B, that demand is actually moving around. If it cannot be fulfilled here, it will be fulfilled there. Why? Because we had some A/B testing in really large scale, right? Because suddenly one of our customers just shut off all their facilities because of COVID. And then, other people bought systems, and then we said, oh my God, what will happen? Well, they'll turn on the light. These guys are going to get stuck with excess capacity, and that just did not happen. Everybody was working 24/7 from May, which usually is the case in peak season starting October, right? And this is, we understood that we have to play a bigger role in the industry, and what we need to do is connect the demand and the supply and actually do it in a smart way that is going to be sustainable on the economical side, on the environmental side, the social side, and that we're going to provide this on demand as an ecosystem. And then we came about with Kornit X and a lot of different models. I'm not going to tire you with all the different models, but it's just to tell you guys that this is where we actually really realize that we cannot just remain a capital equipment company, and you have to be way more than that, because it's just having one part of that is just not enabling the transformation well enough. And this is when we became a much larger company than originally. A lot of software, a lot of data, really collecting that. And this one we came with this mission of becoming the operating system for on-demand sustainable fashion, which means that we are venturing way beyond our comfort zone, our core competencies. One of the main reasons why I'm here is because we open ourselves to the world. We're open to collaborations, because if you want to be best in class, and if you want to enable something that is way bigger than yourself, you can't do it alone, because when you're alone, you can maybe do that for a very narrow vertical. But if you want to expand that impact, then you have to go way beyond that. And that's where we're at right now. It's an insane journey. Some of it is super successful and happy and feeling. Some of it is like loads of failures that you like scratch your head. It's like, oh my God, how did I get myself into this mess? But that's it. That's what we do. That's our mission. That's our vision, and we're serious about it. So that's it. That was my 10 minutes squeezed into 30. That's it.
Thank you, Omer. Hey, thanks for sharing your vision. And I actually filled like 10 pages of my notebook with a bunch of quotes and questions and ideas I would like to discuss with you in the remaining minutes. But I would also like to invite, as we're a small but very knowledgeable and inspiring group of people from different areas of and outside the industry, would like to invite you to enable your cameras and also join the conversation here, as it's a rare opportunity that we come all together. But what I noted and what I took away from your presentation are actually two main things. One is the hyper individualization. So you said social media has taken the power from the brands. I find this extremely interesting, which means there must be new opportunities for people who want to reinvent themselves also through fashion and textiles in various ways. And I also know that you have your hands and feet into Web3 and metaverse and NFTs. So let's probably think a bit, as this is called Visionaries Talk, let's look a bit into the future. And probably we agree that at the moment there's a lot going on. So luxury brands are jumping into Web3 as if what was like the holy grail, the next big opportunity for them to move to transition their pretty conservative businesses into a brighter future. So I was wondering what you see this hyper trend of hyper individualization has to offer for individuals and small scale brands. That's one thing. Probably we can take this away. Another interesting thing that I learned from you is the whole on-demand and customization movement that's going on. But you talked about big scale on-demand production, like Amazon and Chinese manufacturer producing millions of on-demand produced t-shirts a day. But our community are consisting more of an independent brands and small to medium scale enterprises. So I was wondering if there's like on-demand manufacturing opportunities that you see as well. I just wanted to bring some idea into this conversation that Nikolai Storm, who visited us a few weeks ago, shared with us. He's a Danish award, and he said in the future designers will not design and produce clothes and sell them. They will probably design downloadable files or virtual clothes that you can then print in your 3D printer at home, for example. So at some point there's also a risk here, probably, or a challenge that designers concern, probably, let's discuss that they will be replaced, that their work is not needed anymore, because through artificial intelligence and trend forecasting and enabling technologies, designers will probably be less needed, or the role of designers will be changing completely. So on the one hand, as you said, there's a huge opportunity for new players in here to explore fashion in the future. On the other hand, there's also new challenges coming up as big brands are conquering those new technologies, and also putting additional pressure on individuals, independent brands that want to be part of, want to play a role in this market. And again, everyone, if you feel like joining this conversation, feel free to unmute yourself. Don't be shy, and you can also use the chat to share your opinion, your ideas, and your questions there.
Yeah, so it's a lot of different questions and a lot of different domains. So I'll try and navigate myself through it. And if I get lost, please help me. So actually, let's start from the front and go backwards. The front end being Web3 and customer facing, and back end being physical manufacturing, right? So yeah, brands are jumping into the metaverse and Web3, etc., because it's interesting, and because I think that I find it fascinating, right? Because I think that right now we're on the verge of a few very, very big things that are going to happen, right? There are a few very unique and enabling technologies, and it's not about the technology itself. It's, again, that's why I'm saying enabling technologies that are going to be very disruptive the way we live, right? It's going to be Web3 and blockchain, right? It's going to be metaverse in the term of more immersive, I would say, online or virtual experiences. AI, and again, as a part of the metaverse and immersive XR, right? So AR, VR, etc. And I think these are all enabling technologies that the question of if is not relevant anymore. There's no if. I mean, this is going to happen. Now the question is how fast, where it's going to, well, what's the first vertical to adopt it, who's going to be the big winner, etc., etc., etc. And we're going to see a lot of ups and downs because it's going to take a while, right? But there's no if. So I think that they understand that as well, the big brands, and they're going in that direction. However, I don't think that they're going to dominate the space, to be honest, because even from the technology aspect of it, I'm not sure that the technology players are going to be to own the space. Meaning, Facebook becoming Meta, I'm not sure that Meta is going to own the tech infrastructure there, right? So Panasonic used to be the best phones out there, like in your home. I never bought a cell phone from Panasonic. It doesn't make any sense, right? So because something, when the domain changes completely, the players change. I think that one of the reasons why these guys can actually play a bigger role in that domain right now is not because of the front end, but because of the back end. Because at first everybody thought, virtual fashion by itself is going to be a big thing, and it is. But I think that now a lot of interest, and I think more and more people are interested in that seamless. That's the whole point of being immersive, right? We're physical entities at the end of the day, and I think that seamless move between physical and digital and physical is where the interest is, right? And if I see a pure virtual play or a virtual that becomes physical, it's much more interesting, and we see a lot of value in that connection and relationship between physical and virtual bringing more value to physical, and physical in turn brings more value to virtual. And I think these players can actually play there because they have the back end, because they can actually manufacture stuff, because they actually have a place in the physical world, and this is why we follow them in that world. But what we're talking about here is we're talking about democratizing the back end. Right? Because right now, smaller players can't do anything because they can't manufacture. Because if you have to make it for inventory, I mean, there's a lot of risk that you have to put in advance, right? And that risk is setting the bar very, very high. And the concept that we're talking about here is actually lowering the bar on the physical side of things. You can actually make whatever virtual catalog you're interested in.
Let's stick to that.
It's going to become physical until somebody actually desires it.
Let's stick to that for a second, because I find it really interesting. So a reason or a big motivation of the work that we're doing both at the Berlin Fashion Hub and at Sketch is the problem or the challenge that we observed already 15 years back, that it's stupid easy to produce huge quantities in the Far East, for example, for no money, in no time almost. Of course, like in transparent supply chains, you have no idea where it all comes from. You have no like direct communication. You probably can't even go and visit the factory, but it's very, very easy. The infrastructure is great, and the willingness to do business with whoever is overwhelming. But it's almost impossible. Today, it's probably a bit easier because of the whole nearshoring activities during the pandemic. But it's almost impossible to produce small quantities in Europe. Especially if you're a newcomer brand and no one knows you, you don't have a big track record. So let's stick to that for a second, because now we don't really see, like, the macroeconomic situation is very challenging for most industries. But what would be your prognosis? Do you think like mass production will be growing? We see Shein hauls and those like overwhelming trends going on in ultra fast fashion. So do you think like the whole offshoring will replace nearshoring again, and most brands will again produce overseas? Or do you think this is really a revolution that is starting now, where more and more production is being localized, is being returned to close to market? So we see more decentralized production, more micro manufacturing, if you wish, which would probably beneficial for your business. But what is your own perspective on that? What's your prognosis?
So your answer to yourself, right? I mean, this business, because I believe in it. It's not that I believe in it because I'm in this business. I'm a strong believer in that, and I think that whether it will change sometime in the future, yeah, it could be. But I think that this is a trend that is not something. It needs to happen. Why? Because it ticks many boxes. You know, even before COVID. After COVID, it ticks even more boxes, because now nobody can actually trust any of their supply chains anymore, and everybody is looking for alternatives. But even before that, I think that, again, think about the four pillars we discussed about. But let's take the individuality and kind of like the localization, and let's take sustainability. You can't do that anymore. And now Shein, for example, is a very good example of something that does not confine to those rules, but completely changes everything. Completely changes the way things are being made. And you know what? Now they're actually trying to clean their act, and they'll do that as well. But what they did is they said, you know what? We're going to do it differently, right? Shein has, I had this conversation like I don't remember, like 1,200 employees or something like that. And they make more money from than H&M and Zara together, right? It's insane. They have a completely different model. They don't consider themselves a brand. They don't consider themselves a retailer. They consider themselves a tech company. So I think, again, take it as an example, not of the exact details, but how you can really change something, put it on its head, and actually make something completely different. I think that, just to give us a little bit of context, I had this conversation with a gentleman that used to be the COO of PVH, right? So they own, Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Van Huysen, and a lot of brands, right? It's a house of brands. And he told me the story about his first really big task at PVH was in the early 90s to move production to the Far East, to China. And he said, listen, it was insane. There was nothing there. There was no industrial capacity. There were no raw materials. There was no skilled labor. There was nothing. I couldn't do anything. And when you hear that, it's like there was no labor, no raw materials, no manufacturing facilities in China for textile. And that's 90s, right? The 90s. It's not 2 years ago, but it's what? It's 30 years ago.
And maybe we have the same situation now in Europe after like 30 years of brain drain. I know there's some production left, but I mean, it's not comparable to like 40 years ago, where most textiles were produced within only 1,000 kilometers.
True.
So
this is why it has to be done differently. This is exactly what you can't just copy paste what was there before. You have to make it differently. And I think that with technology, we can actually change the way things are done. And if you do it sustainably, and sustainable, I mean, not only from the environmental aspect of it, but also commercially sustainable, it can change the model.
Yeah. So you believe that on demand will completely replace bulk production? Will we? I mean, just to throw a couple of numbers that probably most people here are aware of, that I read in Ellen MacArthur Foundation's report that 45% of all resources put into fashion production are pre-consumer waste, which is insane. Like, it's almost half of everything that we extract from the planet are not even used. They are not even, and then only 1% of clothing is recycled. So obviously, this model is beyond stupid. Whereas on the other hand, there is, I don't know if you might disagree, but I don't know about any valid blueprint that is a counter model to that overproduction. So your perspective would be interesting for me, if that is a replacement, or if you see that, or if your prognosis would be there will always be mass market pre-production, bulk production in low-cost countries, and then parallel to that, there will be on-demand production of either, merchandise products that are very standardized, or in a more like couture approach, craftsmanship approach, more heritage based, high value, high quality, high price, small quantities collections, thinking of the premium plus, affordable luxury, and luxury brands.
Yeah, so I think it's probably going to be a more complex answer to this, yes or no. I think that the answer is probably going to be a hybrid. So I do think that, so up until now, on demand, I'm going to be very, very blunt here and clear. And up until now, on demand was more an enablement model than anything else, right? Enable new business models, new applications, new capabilities. It did not replace anything else. Just to give you an understanding, right? We've been 20 years running direct-to-garment printers. We're market leader by far. So we have over 9% market share, right? We have outrun our competition like crazy, and we've been doing it for many years. Digital penetration right now in this market alone, just this vertical that we're really, really, really good at, it's about 1.5%.
All right. So that might probably take too long. So let's focus for a moment on small to medium scale businesses, because we want them to do well, and we want a colorful, diverse landscape in fashion. We want desirable, beautiful, lovable products that last and stay, and that don't go to waste too early, that we can even resell and so on. But this market is so that the competition is deadly almost. We also see that many independent brands are looking into the whole Web3 opportunities. Let's also, because we don't have much time, and I want to take the chance to step into this for a bit. So I just had I just pulled out a few numbers that I find interesting, like Chanel, for example, they're selling their one of their iconic bags for $4,000 as an NFT, whereas the physical product costs only 50% of that. And Gucci run an auction in collaboration with Christie's, earning 20 million with just one auction of a collection of NFTs that they were dropping. I mean, obviously, as big brands are conquering that world, do you think this might be that might be a chance for independent brands also to escape that take, make, and waste model, or that high-speed model of an overfed market that just has too many brands, too many products, that are almost impossible to produce in small quantities locally? As you said, this might take a while. So the alternative might be to replace virtual products with physical products, especially from the perspective of small to medium scale brands.
Yeah, but then again, you need to make them, right? So
yeah.
First of all, I think that I do think things are going to change a lot faster now, because I think that just the imperative is stronger, right? So even for regulation reasons and stuff like that. Think about sustainability as a big part of it, right? Sustainability up until now is nice to have. Let's be honest here. I mean, brands talk sustainability, but they don't do sustainability, right? It's nice to have more than anything else. Now, when regulation starts kicking in, things will have to change, because the way it's being done right now, it's can't really work. So I do think I do have more hopes to us as people and humanity, and to us as an industry, and to actually improve much faster than we did in the past. And I think that moving into the new domain of Web3, and for me, this is where I find my personal interest more, is it's all about the values that we inject into that world. Because if we're going to do fast fashion overconsumption of virtual items, then it's just going to be the same. We're just going to make a lot of virtual garbage, basically, and consume it in large quantities, and then have zero value of it. It's just going to be the same. I think that what's interesting about Web3 is whether it can actually, because of decentralization, because of the fact that you can create transparency, and because of that, a chain of value creation that you talked about designers not being needed anymore. And once it's backed by blockchain, a designer in that world can actually make money on their work further down the road, right? So even if you sell secondhand and I design something, I can actually make money. So I think that it's all about how we're going to utilize that space, because that space can be exactly the same mirror of the junk that we do in the physical world. It really, and I think that the values at the core of it is what really matters. And I think this is where also the debate, whether like the Gucci's of the world are going to be the ones that are really going to make it in that space, or it's going to be something completely new, right? And I believe that it's a disruptive place, it's a disruptive space, and it's a disruptive ecosystem. And I believe that we'll see different things, new things coming out of that. And I definitely think it provides a lot of opportunity for smaller players. I mean, it is democratizing, it's leveling the play field in a sense. But again, my agenda and our vision is to actually complement that with a democratized way of making stuff in the world as well, really enabling more and more stuff to be done on demand, sustainably, locally. Yes, white underwear, yeah, just make it in bulk in China and send it over. It's fine. I don't think replace everything, but I think that there are many verticals which make sense to do it this way, and that the 45% statistics should just not be a part of.
Yeah. Let's ask some of our participants here what your perspective on that is, do you think we're at the verge of a democratization wave where more market stakeholders get access to through enabling technologies like blockchain, AI, and so on, get access to new market opportunities? Or what is your impression and your perspective? That would be interesting for us here.
Yeah, maybe I go first. Yeah, so my impression is definitely that there are many new opportunities, but I also get the impression that we're facing at the moment two different scenes. Like we have this really strong sustainability scene, and they are like, and then we have this new Web3 metaverse scene, and I think there is still a bridge missing. So that's what I see at the moment, but there are definitely a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see let's see if this bridge is being built and who builds it, or if it exists parallel to each other.
I would like to add something here if I can. I feel that, as well as Jana said, and I will emphasize it more, there needs to be a very clear deviation now looking at digital fashion as a platform that actually allows to young designers or more decentralization of fashion. But we're still talking about physical fashion. The big players are still controlling and will control the market. And also it's a thing I wanted to say, especially to Omer, and I feel there is still huge problem for not only young designers, but I think people who are because we were talking a lot about personalization of garments and styles. But if you don't have the infrastructure to allow those styles, of course, we cannot create t-shirts. It is very available. Hoodies are available, but just a printed hoodie or a printed t-shirt doesn't mean that I'm actually now having a new style. And the foundation of fashion and what actually drives fashion forward together with hyper-capitalism is this idea that things are constantly changing and evolving. We are chasing trends. Yeah, so I think there's like two things together. We have to separate digital and physical. And and of course, digital is and will be sustainable as far as you can talk about it. And physical is facing a lot of challenges.
Yeah. So I completely agree with that, but I do think that there are powers at play to try and change that, and it's a massive change because there's a big challenge here. One of the challenges being that this is a highly labor-intensive industry, and usually when you look at digital transformation, automation plays a big role in it, right? And up until now, automation for textile is super difficult, specifically sewing. Automated sewing is just, and I've been, dabbling with it for the past 8 or 10 or 9 years, and it's very, very difficult. So yes, there are some challenges, but think about it as a model. I mean, the model as services. Think about what happened when large corporations started renting computer power as services. That opened up completely the environment for people to start develop stuff, right? Now it's easier there, right? Because it's just money, and you put some service in place. You call it cloud. It sounds nice, even though it's just servers sitting in a room. But that enabled a lot of stuff to actually take place, right? And I give you guys the Amazon example. So everybody thinks of Amazon as, oh, they just operate stuff for their own good, but they actually enabled a lot of stuff to happen, right? So again, think about Amazon Fashion starting to actually provide services for people, right? That is a game changer in the industry. Now it's going to take a while because it's a tough challenge, and you're absolutely right. The physical part of things is actually very, very tough. But I do think that a change is coming. Yeah, it's going to be slower than we anticipate. It's going to be smaller at first, but I do think there are power in play that actually try to make it happen.
Eden, you want to quickly respond to that, but probably we only have time. I would stretch our slot and give us 5 more minutes, although I would love to continue, because actually now the interesting conversation starts. But anyways, you want to quickly respond to that?
Yeah, just a very short comment regarding the future of automatized fashion. I think that we do see nowadays seamless technologies when it comes to knitwear, and I don't see fashion, like the cut and sew techniques in the fashion industry, kind of like closing the gap. So as we see today, many brands start offering knitwear in a seamless technology and actually reducing the human labor when it comes to production within the fashion industry. But I don't see it happening in the cut and sew. And of course, another thing, once you're knitting a garment, you don't need a print, which means like when we'll start going more towards seamless knitwear, there will be no need for digital printing, or I don't see it. It's basically like working with jacquard. Just saying.
It's one of the most interesting and most innovative technologies that we've seen over the past years. Yeah, surely, which is like zero waste par excellence, right?
Almost. Yeah. It also goes together to what Nikolai said when you're talking about printing or digitally printing our garments maybe in the future. I just asked myself where exactly the normal, so to say, as we know it, process of digital printing will come in place in this manufacturing progress. Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you too. I know I can see Jill, you unmuted yourself like 2 times. You wanna quickly add onto that?
I just wanted to add, it's been incredibly interesting hearing what you've been saying, Omer, and your questions as well, Marta. Really interesting discussion. I think one thing's for sure is that the customer is never going to become less demanding. I think the customer will only be more demanding. And I don't think fast fashion will disappear. So I'm really interested in what you're talking about, Omer, because I think it's finding a solution to make the world better, to meet the customer's demands. So I think there will always need to be a need for print or texture in any way, shape or form, because it's human nature to want something new. It's also human nature to want to belong. So I think that trends will always be there, whether it comes from a designer or from an influencer, people will want to follow. So I think it's incredibly, so it's not so much a question I have, more just, as you say, Marta, there's so much more to discuss on this particular topic. So I've really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you
too. Omer, you have time for a final statement if you wish.
A final statement, famous last words, you mean? No, I think for me, it's always, I always enjoy these conversations just to hear what people have to say, because it's like, it's such a complex topic and there's so many point of views. And I think that it's important to actually hear that there's no right and wrong answers here. I think probably because of the complexity, probably there can be enough room for a lot of different models, and a lot of the things are going to take shape. For me, I think the last words that I would like to, I'm not optimistic by nature, that's true, but I'm optimistic by choice in this domain. And I think that there is a way to actually impact this. I mean, it's a huge thing, and everybody, that's why I gave the example of the 90s moving stuff into China, because we see something and we think, oh, that's the way it is because it's an axiom. It's always been this way, but it's not. It's like everything we talked about here today was man-made. everything was our own creation, right? So we can actually create it differently and create something else and do. And I think that alternatives are always there. And I think that all of us understand that there is and there must be a better alternative to the way things are right now, because it just doesn't fit, you know, what needs to happen right now. And I think everybody feels that, everybody understands that. So I do think that on the basis of that, things will change on a larger scale than just here and there. Hopefully it's going to be, you know, sooner rather than later. Hopefully you know, all the people that can help will make as much impact as they can. So that's kind of like my last remarks about that. It's like it's really in our hands, even if it's small steps, but it's everything here is us basically.
Quite motivational. Thank you for not leaving us with in a dystopian devastation. And this is a wrap. I would like to thank everyone for joining, and also thanks for your great inputs. And it's actually a principle that we want to establish more of a culture is, as we meet so many inspiring and smart people, why not just letting others join those conversations and disclose and open up a bit? It's quite an experiment, and the community we started here, especially as end of the year, is still something to build on, and we started that already only a few weeks ago. And I want to thank you for your support, and we will continue this series of open and inspirational conversations. And that's that. I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of the day, and see you very soon. Thanks, Omer, for your time.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you all for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take
a
care.
lot.
Bye-bye.